Sounds good.
Mm. Hi, everyone. I'm CEO of Publica, where we are using blockchain technology to help authors sell directly to their readers. And that's in my blog called Where's Your Store? And helping readers really own their book tokens and learn a new way to think about the books that they buy. And with me today is Lindsley Medlin, who is the COO of Pit Lane Strategies, and he's a certified blockchain professional. He's also running a book ICO in Publica's first wave of book ICOs, so I'm really happy that Lindsley has time to talk to us about that today. And Lindsley is also a consultant and a speaker in the New York area, and I met him at Consensus in New York. And I noticed that, Lindsley, sometimes people call you the cleaner. What is that about?
Well, that goes back many years when I was working with a company, and we had a lot of growth and a lot of different projects and things going on. So whenever something came up where something was going wrong or something needed to be done and maybe we didn't exactly know what to do, it was a new challenge. I was kind of the go-to project guy, and my colleagues just started calling me the cleaner after a while because, I would clean things up or go tackle things that were kind of new and unique and sometimes kind of ugly. And so that kind of stuck after a while. And, I use that sometimes now because it's kind of fun and it helps differentiate me a little bit. So,
well, there should be some fun in everyone's work life. And we're going to talk about the certified blockchain professional. I think that's fascinating. But first, tell us about your book that's in your book ICO.
Sure. I actually, just so everybody knows, I actually do have the book.
Paper copies, okay.
It's
Great.
a real thing. The book was something I wanted to do after many years of working with different business owners and CEOs. And it's targeted towards business owners and CEOs, but it's not exclusively for them because it's really relevant for anybody who is leading an organization or leading a business unit. And it just was my way of sharing some of the things that I'd learned to try to help people understand some tips. And because I'm a Formula One racing fan, I built it around the idea of a pit stop. And that's why the book is called, the 1 hour business pit stop, a formula for refueling growth. And it's short, it's easy to read. It's not an academic pursuit with, a lot of research in it. It's just really, what I've learned and some tips that I felt I'd pass on, but using an analogy in a way that I thought hopefully people would be able to relate to and could grasp the material and it would sink in for them.
Well, business people and even individuals who are just making a living, sometimes you feel you're under that pressure, right? And the pit stop is a nice image for, let's just take a minute here and refuel this thing.
Absolutely. And, and it's, you think about, the pit stop being a whole different group of people. You got mechanics, you've got race engineers, you've got the driver, you've got people changing tires, you've got people, checking fuel. So, and then at the same time, there's a whole bunch of data being analyzed and crunched about what's going on. So it really is, in many ways, it's a, it's a mini business challenge that's going on. And like I said, I myself am a race fan, and because I wanted to have fun with what I do, I called my consulting business Pit Lane Strategies, and then obviously for branding purposes, the book ties in with that, and I've got a presentation that I do around the content of the book, and I use some videos and some images with racing, and just try to have fun while people learn a little bit as well.
Well, that's sort of the way book marketing should go these days. I've had some publishers explain to me, and authors, that the book is part of their overall marketing strategy for everything they do. And it reminds me of Mark Twain, who actually did not make a living writing books. He made a living speaking from the stage.
Yep.
But the books are important, right? And we still have them. And Shakespeare didn't make a living writing books. He made a living putting on plays, right, in cooperation with the theater.
Sure.
So your book is sort of this real world advice from the cleaner, right? From someone who's been in the pit stop. And I started young in rock bands. So I always say everything I know I learned in rock bands. And there's a parallel here because, you know, you're working on your own. You're doing the best you can do for the group. But the pit stop is sort of your reminder that you're part of a team here. You're not doing this alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, and I refer to that in the book. I talk about, you know, as a business executive, as an owner or a CEO, you've got to have your pit crew. And, you know, the way I explain that, your pit crew is more than just the people in your organization. You know, it's not just solid people in your accounting group or people in your customer service group. One of the things I see a lot of times with smaller business owners is that they get so busy and they don't find the time to get out of their organization and network with professionals outside. Because to me, that's part of your pit crew. Because when you're running your business, you need to have a good banker. You need to have a good attorney. You need to have a good insurance person. You might need a good person to help with a marketing strategy. And so, you know, that's the broader, you know, wider scope of what I consider to be your pit crew. And, you know, but it's something deliberate. You have to build that team. You have to find experts and you have to cultivate those relationships. And unfortunately, a lot of people get too busy to get out and do that. But I think it's a critical factor in being successful.
Well, you're an author, so maybe you can help authors with this, you know, speaking as the cleaner, because an author also, they're running a business themselves. Every book is a startup of its own, and they're too busy. And authors always want to get back to the typewriter to write more books.
Yep.
So that's where they're too busy at. It's like everything is a distraction from that. So as the cleaner, what can you tell authors in their way?
Well, you know, I had a good crew, a good pit crew for my book writing process, which was a team that helped me in terms of setting a strategy and goals. You know, I would get on the phone with my editor on a weekly basis, worked in chunks, did little pieces. You know, when it came time to do cover design, we worked on that process. So you can't do it alone because you don't know the process. You don't understand the process. Even though, you know, you read things that say you can self-publish, which is effectively what I did. I self-published, but I didn't do it all by myself. Self-publishing meant not using a major publishing firm. But there are ways that, you know, that you can do it. But again, you know, having a team around you of editors, copywriters, designers, you know, marketing people to tell you, you know, hey, this is a good way to get your book information out. And, you know, I consider you and the Publica team part of that crew. Once we met and I understood, you know, the value of what you guys offer, that just became an extension of my, you know, authoring and writing pit crew.
Well, that's great. That's the way I'd like you to think of it. And I want to come back to Publica because of the blockchain aspect, and you're a certified blockchain professional. But just one more question, because I'm old enough to have been in that big five publishing business many, many years ago, and for quite a long time. And what's different now is the publisher provided that pit crew, right? That they belong to the publisher, right? And they still do that. But the people who used to be in those pit crews, they're now freelancers, right? They're available. You can find them. How do you find them? since they're not at the big publisher now?
Well, again, I've spoken with people who've asked for recommendations, that you can find them through networking. Myself, I found them through someone that I knew who had written a book and had built a process around this. But if you're starting from scratch and you want to publish on the blockchain, obviously, Publica is another resource now as well, where as you are growing and building your platform, you're bringing in people into that ecosystem. So, but I think any good process starts with speaking with someone who's done it. And I know that Publica has the Telegram channel of the other authors. And so, there are a lot of different ways to talk to other people who've been on this journey and get their input and ask them what worked for them and recommendations.
There you go. Networking, put together your pit crew.
Absolutely.
Come on over. So tell us, at what point in your, you started as the cleaner and then pit lane strategies and in this book, the 1 hour pit stop for refueling growth. At what point did the certified blockchain professional fit into that in sort of a calendar way?
Well, after working in companies and then going out on my own and working as a consultant, obviously part of what you have to do is continue to educate yourself, stay on top of what's going on out in the market, learn new technologies or trends or skills that are going to be useful to your clients and potential clients. So, a little over a year ago, I really started reading more about blockchain and the potential that it has as a technology. And as I got further and further into reading and studying it, I really enjoyed doing that. And I looked at it and I said, well, this is real early on stuff, but I did find there are a couple of different organizations, that you can find online that offer training and then assessment testing and certification. And I thought, again, it wasn't a undue burden on my time or finances to do that. And I felt like it was a challenge for me that if I was serious about wanting to learn this and be able to offer advice or assistance in this area, I might as well start by getting one of the certifications. But I'll tell you that, my desire to learn and continue to understand the technology has pushed me so far that, quite frankly, what I know now is way beyond the scope of what I needed to know for the certification. And as you know, this is a changing, dynamic area, and things are coming up day after day. So it's really about staying on top of what's going on in that area and being knowledgeable and being willing to learn. And part of how I do that is I also want to take part and experience these things by myself. So as I was learning about blockchain and the cryptocurrency aspects of it, I opened accounts, I opened wallets, I started trading because I wanted to have that firsthand experience. And then when you and I met at the Consensus Conference and you explained the idea of what you were building with Publica and publishing on the blockchain, I thought, great, that's another thing I should do as someone who wants to be an expert in the field and be able to go through that process and understand it and be able to say, not only am I knowledgeable about blockchain, but I took my book and I published it on the blockchain as well. And while I do that, I'm also supporting, the ecosystem of these blockchain organizations like yourself and other platforms that I am experimenting and playing around with.
That's great. There's no education better than doing it. And I talked to Warren Brown, another author doing a book ICO at the same time as you, and he writes fiction, and yet he had woven cryptocurrency into his stories, so I want to read that. Of course, I think that's
sounds interesting.
Great. But as an author now that you did do the training and assessment testing, and then learned that, there's continually more to learn, and you can try it with something as harmless as a book, right? You can buy and sell a book. I mean, nothing bad can happen, right?
Sure.
This is, how do you think that might, with this new level of comfort that you have with cryptographic protected content, blockchain currencies and so on, and the vocabulary that comes with it, do you think it will have an effect on your future writing?
Well, I thought at some point it would be helpful for me to also maybe follow up with a blockchain related book. I do presentations and I speak on blockchain and cryptocurrencies at a beginning level, because I think it's important. There are a lot of people that want to know and want to learn about this, but they don't have. There's just so much information. It's like that old analogy: you're drinking from a fire hose. And so I try to get people over the hump where at least the light bulb is going off, and now they understand it, and now they can go do some more of what they want to do. So I know there's people out there that are writing big, long books about blockchain, and they have a lot of technical information, and you can narrow down into one specific area of the cryptography, for example. But for me, my follow-up might be something simple, 101 level, to continue to educate people in the space. Because I think as people become more comfortable with the topic, and as the technologies develop, things will happen. It wasn't that long ago, if you remember back when the internet first started to blossom, people didn't know if you said the word download, or you said website, or even said email, bandwidth. These were terms that people really didn't understand. So there's a lot of that terminology being developed in the blockchain space. And so even relating to Publica, to talk about publishing a book on the blockchain, people understand the concept of publishing, but they don't really understand the concept of blockchain. But as they understand it and they realize the power that it gives the author and the power that it gives the owner of that piece of work, I think people will start to adopt these types of things. Also, again, as the technology develops and the entry points to blockchain and crypto technology becomes a little bit more user-friendly as well.
Well, Lindsley, I'm glad you brought up the internet era, because there was an Internet for Dummies book at one time, which was not for dummies. And but people learn the words that they want to learn to do the things they want to do. And I love the idea of, I'm going to keep thinking about this pit stop idea, because in a pit stop, everyone's in a race to have an impact of some kind on what they're trying to achieve. But in the pit stop, conversation is kept to a minimum, right? You use the words you need to use to get the job done. So I think you're absolutely right. The words that start to filter into the pit stops of life they need to be found and talked about. And I think someone like you is better equipped to do that than most.
And also, the concept of the pit stop is you just have to stop once in a while and take a quick assessment and determine, are we doing what we need to do, or do we need to make changes? And I think in the blockchain world, particularly, things are moving so quickly. There's always a lot of discussion about, does this project require a blockchain solution? And, it's important that you understand what a blockchain solution is, so that then you can determine, does this project require a solution? And I'm sure you went through that thought process when you were, coming up with the idea.
We didn't do blockchain just to do blockchain. We said, this is the only way we can do this that we know.
Right. And so those are those kinds of pit stops where you take an assessment and move on they're valuable. So you don't waste a lot of time, effort, and resource on something that isn't going to get you anywhere.
Well, I'm thinking now, I want to buy your pit stop book for the people at Publica, because now that I think about it, we do that, right? We have our functions and our jobs, and but every once in a while we come together just to tune up each other's cars. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's from me, right? I know what kind of people are interested in the Publica project, but you speak as a blockchain professional about blockchain sometimes, and you speak about general business growth other times. Are you finding any confluence of the people that you talk to and their interests, or is there a totally different audience for you?
You mean on the blockchain versus the content of the book, or?
Yeah.
Well, the blockchain technology really is a broad technology, and as you know, it's going to impact many different industries as it evolves. So as I talk to people about business in general, it's easy to layer in the discussion of the blockchain because it will impact most people in some way in their business. Now, if I'm speaking with someone whose business is involved in supply chain, clearly there's a very strong correlation, and there's a lot of development in the blockchain space going on in the supply chain industry. Other industries, maybe not as much as early on, but at a minimum, I think everybody will be impacted to some degree as the tools develop, even just from the cryptocurrency side, with the ability to conduct transactions in a peer-to-peer manner, like you can with a product like Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Or as the concept of tokenization takes hold in different industries, so tokenizing a book, for example, and utilizing that, or tokenizing some other asset like real estate or art, I think people will become more comfortable. So certain industries are layering on top and merging into that very quickly. Other ones will get there later on. But I think universally, it's something that you really can have the conversation with just about anybody and find a way to relate it to what they're doing in their daily life.
Yeah. Imagine if I had asked you that same question 20 years ago and used the word internet, it would have been the same answer, right?
True. I mean, you always have the people that say, who's going to, remember the internet? People say, who's going to use that, right? I mean, who really wants to buy something online, or who wants to read, their news online? And people said that.
Yeah.
But as the technologies developed, we were able to develop things that we never thought were possible. And I think that's where we are with the blockchain technology is, the technology will develop, and things that we can't really think about as a use case for it now will also develop. So, I think it's an exciting time.
Well, thanks for that, Lindsley, because most of the time I have to talk about Publica in terms of what is its current status, right? How is it, where does it fit into mass adoption? What does it compare to? It's mostly what I get to talk about. But in fact, a lot of the Publica project is, let's just find out what happens.
Sure.
Because
nobody
really knows.
Yeah, you can't control the mass adoption. You didn't start this to say, okay, in 6 weeks we're going to now be as big as Amazon.
Right.
That's not the purpose. But you're solving a problem, and you're applying a technology to a process that you think is valuable, and that you think will improve that process and make people, better for it. And the adoption will come. And again, you're at the early stages. You're dealing with, sometimes the technology can be a little bit clunky or a little bit, crazy. We all know that, right? In terms of dealing with new things. But the people that are dealing with cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology is such a small percentage of the overall population right now. Mass adoption will come as it grows. I think that your product is a viable product. There's a lot of technologies out there that they did ICOs and they've raised money and they still don't have products out there. You've launched a viable working product at this point, which I think is good. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to participate with putting my book on the blockchain through Publica, is as a way to support the platform, but also use it as a way to show people, when I talk about blockchain, well, here's a real use case, and I've participated, and you can actually go buy my book on the blockchain and own the token. And guess what? Once you own that token for that book, you can give it away, you can sell it, you can auction it off, do whatever you want because you own it as the owner and the author of that. As the owner of that book that you've already purchased. And so,
just that conversation, Lindsley, is going to be great, right? As people go, I could do what?
Yeah,
we don't know how people are going to respond emotionally, but let's find out by letting them try it.
Just try it, yeah. And my book, as I said, it's not a big research journal. It's a small, quick read. I tell people, you can read through it in 10, 15 minutes if you want, because the point is to share information, not provide you with 250 pages of something that you feel like is a chore to get through. So,
well, I just finished it.
I've also, I said, well, let me price this through the ICO and on Publica reasonably. It's not about, making hundreds of thousands of dollars selling a book. For me, it's about marketing. It's about sharing information, and it's about using the platform. So, there's an easy way to get in and try these things without having to spend a bunch of money.
Thank you for explaining your thought process behind your business model as well, because that there is the core of why the Publica project was started and crowdfunded by crypto-friendly people. Is other e-commerce platforms, they have a business model for themselves, and then the users and suppliers have to fit the business model. Sure. And what we want to do is we want to make this your business model, the one that works for you in your relationship to the readers. And that's why we have to do the decentralization. That's why we have to give you all that control. And we don't actually know what you're going to do with this business model. You'll figure it out yourself. And right. those pit stops are when you're going to think of the new business model, or you're going to meet someone who says, hey, Lindsley, I have a business model idea for you, right? That you can relate to a book. That's what we're hoping you'll use it for. So this is actually two questions. Separate them if you want, but I think they're related. Because we were just talking about how the internet in the beginning was completely decentralized, right? Everyone had their own website. Now we think of what the stock market calls the FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, which are incredibly centralized, and for lots of good reasons. There's a lot of great things they can do because they're centralized. But the internet was decentralized, and blockchain is decentralized. That's why we can make it work for you. How do you now discover the books and the authors that you want to read? Because you have that perspective of back when it was, back before Amazon, right? There was the internet already, and that was helpful. And now here we are 20 years later. How do you personally, Lindsley, in your continuing education, find the books and authors that you want to read today?
Well, some of that is really the same way we've always done it, right? Sometimes somebody mentions a book to you. And even before Amazon, people would say, hey, I read this book, and they might give you their copy, right? And you'd read it, and then you'd pass it on to somebody else. So word of mouth is always clearly, if I'm speaking with someone and they say, hey, I read this great book, I'm going to go look it up and consider it. If I read a review about a book, or read an article that mentions a book, I'll consider that. Back in the day, we used to just browse the bookshop, right? We'd walk into Barnes and Noble or wherever, and we'd just look at the shelves, and we'd find things we'd never heard of. So, but there's an analogy for that too. I mean, now you can go on Amazon or any of these other locations and scroll through or search their catalog. But there's so many books out there, you can't look through all of them. So typically I'm going to look for recommendations and listen to what people say, or particularly when it comes to things like blockchain, because I'm reading articles, you'll find things that come up, or somebody will post something on LinkedIn, for example, about, hey, I read this book. So that's always a good way to find out about things like that.
Great. Word of mouth and networking. That's come up a couple of times today.
Absolutely.
So I have to say this the right way. I have a conversation coming up in a few minutes with one of the big 5 publishers, which is pretty funny since we're, a startup. And I'm going to go in there inspired from this conversation. And I really appreciate all the thought that you've put into it and your support for Publica. And I really look forward to you coming back time and again and helping other authors understand what this can do for them and readers. So thank you, Lindsley, and we'll talk again soon, okay?
I appreciate that. And, I'm glad we had an opportunity to meet a consensus, because this, again, with all of what's going on in the blockchain world, there's projects out there that sometimes you don't hear about, or, there's just so much going on. And again, you and I went to a conference, we sat at a table, we had lunch, we had a conversation, and out of that came this opportunity. And, I'm able to share and pass the word and help. And, so I can't say enough about people getting out and networking. And I'm happy to help you validate the platform. And, like I said, it's not about, trying to make a ton of money up front. With early adopters, it's about using and validating and sharing and just being excited about something and being part of something at the beginning and being able to help it move along and make suggestions. And so, I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. And, I think I may have mentioned this to you once before, that, this provides me an opportunity when I do speak to be able to give my audience a token and say, here's, download this app and I will send you a token. You can own my book. It's published on the blockchain. And now you've been exposed to something called Publica, and you've got my book, but now when you open your library, go read something by someone else, support the platform, learn how this technology works. And eventually you won't even know that you're using a book on the blockchain. But again, it's just a way to share and pass the word on. And because I think it's important in these early stages with a lot of these projects like yourself, we've got to help people learn and help people adopt it. And you never know, somebody's going to use Publica, and then they're going to have a thought about a different use case for blockchain and tokenization, and that will then spawn something else wonderful. And I think it's exciting.
Folks, you heard it here first. Lindsley just explained it. Yes, you're going to have great ideas. You heard him use tokenization in a sentence with no trouble at all. This is great. Thank you, Lindsley. And his book ICO is live on Publica right now. And please, I think it's a great book. I like talking to Lindsley, and I'll see you soon. Bye, publicans.
Thanks. Bye.